Hey guys, Brandon Johnson here again, and thanks for joining me. Today we're looking at the G run, quintessential G run that really defines the bluegrass sound in terms of soloing, especially on the guitar. So what I've done here is I've presented kind of the basic Lester Flatt version, which was the originator, the original version of the G run. And then we look at kind of the standard G run that you can't really attribute to anybody. It's just the standard G run, but it's also the basis for soloing as well. So you can play it while you're playing rhythm, or you can play it in the middle of the solo. So then after that, we look at the Mccoury version, and then we look at Tony, we look at Doc, and we look at Norman Blake. So let's check it out. Okay, let's talk about the G run, the G bluegrass run, the most famous run in all of bluegrass. So, when we look at this little lick, that has such an impact on this style of music, and in a lot of ways, it really defines the bluegrass sound. I mean, especially on the guitar. And you can even build entire solos out of this lick, out of this one lick. So let's take a look at the beginning here. Let's take a look at the origins of this lick. So, there's a few videos online of, the origins of the actual bluegrass run, the G run. And I've heard Brian Sutton say that, the origins really come from Lester Flatt. Flatt and Scruggs, of course, are, some of the originators of the modern bluegrass sound. And Lester Flatt, what he would do is when he was playing rhythm, he wasn't really a flat picker. Flat picking hadn't really been invented yet, or hadn't really become a thing yet. So Lester Flatt, when he was playing rhythm, he would play what is considered to be the origins of the G run, or the G run in its infancy back in the 30s, which would sound like this. So basically what he was doing is he was putting his index finger down on the D string 2nd fret, and then he was playing that open G. Okay, and that's kind of the origins of the bluegrass lick, because the bluegrass lick is played a lot of different ways, but it has one thing in common, and that is the open G. So it always ends on that open G. And it's usually the open G string. It's not always a G note, although sometimes if you're playing it, descending, for example, like this is ascending. A lot of times if you're playing it from low to high, that's ascending. And if you play it that way, it's going to end with that open G. So Lester Flatt really did kind of lay the groundwork for this famous G run by simply playing that open G and also that 2nd fret D every time the G chord would turn around. Okay, and over the years, that simple variation of the G run kind of got a little more elaborated on. It became more of a staple of the bluegrass sound, and some of the more technical pickers came in and they added their own notes to it, and they added their own style to it. What you're noticing there is I'm adding a slide up and an open D to the original Lester Flatt version, which is just. Okay, and that's a little bit more of a complex way to play the original Lester Flatt version. It's still kind of old-timey sounding, you know, you kind of got that old-timey feel to it. And that could be seen as kind of the next variation of the G run, or the next evolution of the G run, maybe 10, 20 years later. You'd hear a lot of pickers playing it that way. And of course, through the years, you know, as pickers got a little bit more technical, and you know, the style of music was being played more and more, the G run kind of evolved. So you'd still hear the original old-fashioned versions, and over the years, it eventually turned into something with a little bit more picking to it, and you can add in some pull-offs, some up and down strokes, and some hammer-ons to this one. So, you know, what we're getting at now is kind of what you could look at as kind of the modern variation of the G run, or the famous bluegrass G run, and that would sound like this. Okay, so if we slow that down a little bit, what we're doing here is we're basically taking the original version, which is, okay, so that's the ending of the, you know, we're keeping that there. And then the second variation, which was, so instead of playing, we're playing, okay, so we're adding in that little hammer on. And of course, you can see that, as we always do, we're playing this out of the G, the open G chord position here, which kind of gives us that feeling that we're playing this out of a chord. Okay, so we're playing that low E, 3rd fret to start, because that's kind of out of the G chord position. So we're playing that on a downstroke. And then you see there's a brief pause there before we actually go into the slide up and the pull up. And then I like to play that open A on an upstroke, 1st fret A, slide up to 2, and then we're going to play an upstroke on the open D, and then a pull off on the 2nd fret D to open D, and then the open G. Okay, and you can consider that to be kind of like the standard version of the G run, or the, you know, the modern version of the G run. Okay, so let's play the standard variation of the G run now, start to finish. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, three, four. Okay, now let's check out a couple different pickers and how they play the G run. So everybody that plays bluegrass style guitar, has a variation of this run that they play. So the first one I want to look at here is Del Mccoury. Now Del Mccoury is one of the all-time great bluegrass pickers, bluegrass rhythm players, and really a great singer. You know, he's one of the quintessential bluegrass musicians on the guitar, and his band that he has with his sons, the Mccourys, are absolutely amazing. So So let's look at how Del might play this. Now Del basically plays it the same, because this G run is of course very similar. And what it has in common with the lesser flat one is it has that open G ending that we were talking about. So you're just landing on that open G string. So what we're doing is we're starting the same way. What Del does differently is he blueses it up a little bit, if you will. So what he does is he plays that D string 3rd fret to open G instead of the 2nd fret D to G. So whereas a lot of pickers might play it like this, Del likes to play it with that 3rd fret D string instead of the 2nd fret. So he would play it like this. So it's going to be, instead of, and that's kind of a Del Mccoury signature move right there. So he goes. Okay, so when we look at this Del Mccoury lick here, it's basically the same. We're starting on a downstroke on the 3rd fret E, and then a slight rest right there, and then we're going to play the open A to 1st fret A to 2nd fret A on a slide. So it's going to be, of course, we're playing this out of the G position. So I do like to use my index finger when I'm doing the slide. Okay, right here, instead of doing the pull-off like we did in the standard version, Del likes to go to that 3rd fret D and then just play the G right after it. So it'd be. And what he's actually doing there is, by playing that 3rd fret D instead of the 2nd fret D, you're putting that note into the G pentatonic scale, or the G blues scale, so it makes it sound a little bit bluesier than maybe the country or the bluegrass style, which is the 2nd fret D. And of course, you could play this a number of different ways, right? So you could play it the first way, which would be this. Or you could play it kind of more of the old-fashioned or the old-timey way, which might sound like this. Like if you're ever playing in 3/4 time signature, for example, that lick sounds really cool in a 3/4 time signature. So if you're going, and you hear Del do a lot of that kind of stuff when you hear him playing live too. He'll play that G run right before either the lyrics start or right before the solo starts. It kind of just depends, but there's a number of different ways you could do it. But Del is mainly the one who likes to play that bluesy note as opposed to that country note. So that's the main difference there with Del's version.